You know what is strange? The moment that changed the entire global economy did not look dramatic at all. No explosions, no declaration of war, just a quiet decision in Washington. It was a Sunday evening in 1971 when the gold window was permanently closed. The physical constraint on money was removed, transforming the dollar into a pure fiat currency. But here is what most people do not ask. Why did the world keep accepting it? If the paper was no longer backed by gold, why did the entire global financial system not collapse into immediate chaotic ruin? The answer is the petrodollar system. America made a brilliant, calculated geopolitical move. They approached Saudi Arabia and the OPEC nations with a unique deal. The United States would provide absolute military protection and weapons. In exchange, the Saudis would price all of their oil exports exclusively in United States dollars. Think about the extraordinary leverage this created. If you are Japan or Germany or any nation on earth, you need oil to survive. To get that oil, you now absolutely need dollars. America essentially outsourced the backing of its currency from physical gold bars to the world energy supply. This established an artificial but incredibly powerful structural demand for American paper. Nations everywhere had to hold massive dollar reserves just to keep their economies running. But what do these countries do with all those excess dollars sitting in their vaults? They cannot just leave them there doing nothing. They reinvested them back into the United States by purchasing treasury bonds. This is the simple mechanics of the complex debt loop that built the modern American empire. We print the money, we buy real manufactured goods from the world, they take our paper and then they lend it right back. This infinite loop allowed the United States to run massive deficits without facing the immediate inflationary consequences that would destroy any other nation. We were effectively exporting our inflation to the rest of the globe. But this incredible privilege created a dangerous psychological trap. When you can print wealth without producing an equal amount of value, hubris naturally sets in. Fast forward to today, and that hubris has materialized into an incomprehensible $34 trillion national debt. If you spend $1 million every single day since the birth of Jesus Christ, you do not even come anywhere close. The scale of this obligation is completely alarming. Historically, as Ray Dalio profoundly points out, whenever an empire reaches this late stage of the long-term debt cycle, the exact same sequence of events unfolds. The debt becomes too massive to be paid back through productive economic growth. The interest payments alone begin to consume the entire national budget. The government is left with only two choices. They can either dramatically cut spending and raise taxes, which causes an immediate and brutal domestic depression, or they can simply print more money to cover the gap. They always choose to print. Printing money intentionally devalues the currency, making the massive debt slightly easier to manage but destroying the purchasing power of the middle class in the process. This leads directly to severe internal conflict, political polarization, and social unrest. People become angry, desperate, and divided, precisely what we see dominating global news headlines today. But the internal decay is only half of the equation. The far more dangerous threat to American hegemony is happening externally. The rest of the world is watching this mathematical reality unfold, and they are growing incredibly nervous about holding their wealth in a depreciating financial asset. This brings us to the ultimate weaponization of the financial system. For decades, the dollar was viewed as a neutral global utility, a safe harbor for international trade. But when geopolitical conflicts erupted, America began using the dollar as a weapon. By freezing the foreign exchange reserves of rival nations and blocking them from the SWIFT payment system, Washington sent a chilling message to the entire global South. If you disagree with American foreign policy, your sovereign wealth can be rendered completely inaccessible overnight. This was a profound miscalculation that violently accelerated the global shift toward absolute financial decoupling everywhere. Nations realized that holding American debt was no longer a safe investment. It was a massive strategic liability. This realization birthed the accelerated expansion of the BRICS coalition. China, Russia, India, and others are actively building an alternative financial architecture to bypass the dollar entirely. They are hoarding physical gold at record levels and settling bilateral trade in their own local currencies. Financial decoupling weakens dollar demand. Weakening dollar demand increases debt pressure because fewer foreign buyers are showing up to purchase American Treasury bonds. Without those foreign buyers, the Federal Reserve must step in as the ultimate primary buyer. This creates an inescapable doom loop of inflation and currency debasement. Ray Dalio warns that this exact dynamic is what historically precedes a changing world order. Think of it like tectonic plates. For a long time, the pressure builds silently beneath the surface. Everything looks normal, but the underlying structure is fundamentally unstable. The unipolar dominance of the United States is slowly colliding with the rising force of a multipolar world. When a declining empire with unpayable debt is challenged by rising rival powers, the transition is almost never entirely peaceful. The economic warfare eventually spills over into kinetic warfare. When a nation can no longer project power through its economic strength, it inevitably resorts to projecting power through its military might. History shows us that war is the ultimate distraction from domestic economic failure. It unifies a fractured population, justifies emergency powers, and most importantly, it provides a convenient excuse to default on obligations or restructure the global financial system under the guise of national security. We are standing on the precipice of this exact historical repetition. The staggering debt burden acts as the primary catalyst pushing the geopolitical chess pieces toward a devastating and unavoidable global military confrontation. The mechanics of this transition are deeply uncomfortable to acknowledge. We are witnessing the systematic dismantling of the post-war financial architecture. When foreign central banks stop buying our debt, the cost of borrowing skyrockets for everyone. Mortgages, car loans, and corporate debt become impossibly expensive. The domestic economy grinds to a halt, forcing the central bank into a desperate corner. They must choose between letting the system collapse under the weight of high interest rates or printing trillions more to artificially suppress yields. This mathematical certainty is what drives the rising powers to challenge the existing global order directly. They smell the vulnerability. China understands that America cannot sustain a prolonged arms race while simultaneously servicing $34 trillion of sovereign debt. The financial reality creates a window of opportunity for rivals to assert dominance in critical regions. It is a terrifying game of geopolitical chicken. Every headline you read about tariffs, supply chain disruptions, semiconductor bans, and regional proxy wars is intimately connected to this singular underlying issue. They are all symptoms of an empire desperately trying to maintain its grip on a world that is structurally slipping away. The trust is completely and utterly gone forever. Trust is the only thing that gives a fiat currency its power. When that trust evaporates, the entire illusion shatters. The optimistic scenario is that the world manages a slow, coordinated transition to a new, digital UN-style framework, a multipolar currency system where power is shared and economic imbalances are gradually resolved through peaceful diplomatic negotiation. But human history points heavily toward a much more pessimistic scenario. Empires do not voluntarily relinquish their extraordinary privilege. They fight tooth and nail to preserve their leverage. The tectonic plates of global finance and military supremacy are actively colliding right now everywhere. The friction from this collision generates intense heat, manifesting as inflation, civil unrest, and aggressive foreign policy. America cannot pay its debt in absolute purchasing power. The math simply does not work. Therefore, the only viable strategy left to manage the decline is to inflate the debt away while strategically engaging in conflict to secure vital resources, maintain global influence, and suppress the rise of coordinated opposition. War creates a massive surge in industrial production and justifies unlimited deficit spending without the usual political resistance. It temporarily masks the underlying insolvency of the nation behind a thick veil of patriotism. This is the brutal reality of the long-term debt cycle. It is a predictable, mechanical process that has destroyed the Dutch, the British, and countless other empires before them. The cycle always ends in a massive restructuring of wealth and power, usually triggered by a period of intense global conflict. The warning signs are flashing bright red across every major economic indicator. We are watching the real-time unwinding of the petrodollar system, the very foundation of American prosperity. As Saudi Arabia entertains the idea of accepting other currencies for oil, the structural demand for dollars slides downward. This is not just an abstract economic theory. It is a direct threat to the standard of living of every single citizen. When the dollar loses its status as the supreme global reserve currency, the United States will finally be forced to live within its actual means. The artificial wealth generated by the infinite debt loop will vanish, replaced by severe austerity and a dramatic reduction in global purchasing power. To prevent this sudden shock, the political establishment is willing to risk everything, including a direct confrontation with nuclear-armed rivals. The stakes have literally never been this incredibly high. The convergence of these massive historical forces creates a perfect storm of instability. Internal political division makes it impossible to enact meaningful fiscal reform, while external geopolitical pressure forces the government into increasingly aggressive defensive postures. We are caught in a trap of our own making. The weaponization of finance has proven to be a double-edged sword, accelerating the exact outcome it was designed to prevent. By using the dollar as a tool of warfare, we have forced the world to find an alternative. Now, the momentum of global decoupling is completely unstoppable, gaining speed with every passing month. This inevitable financial shift is precisely why military tensions are escalating across the globe. When the economic leverage fails, the military leverage is deployed. It is a desperate attempt to maintain order in a system that is fundamentally out of balance. The $34 trillion debt is not just a number on a spreadsheet. It is the ultimate driver of future conflict. It represents a promise that cannot be kept, a burden that cannot be carried, and a systemic failure that demands a massive, painful resolution. We are living through the most dangerous phase of the empire life cycle. The transition will be volatile, unpredictable, and historically profound. We are watching the turning of an era driven by the inescapable mathematics of debt and the relentless ambition of rising nations. The old world order is fracturing and the new one is being forged in the fires of economic and kinetic warfare. So the next time you see a headline about inflation, foreign conflicts, or central bank policies, try holding all of those things together in the same frame because they are not separate stories. They are the exact same story of an empire facing its end.